Breaking news tonight, ISIS militants released footage they claim shows the beheading of British hostage David Haines. This is the CIA now says ISIS has grown threefold in just the past few months. The barbaric army now at 31,000 fighters. With me, former CIA Middle East Chief of Station, Gary Berntsen. All right, Gary, good evening. First, your reaction to the beheading news tonight.
Of course, it's a horrifying, incident, and these are going to continue. ISIS is going to continue to do this to intimidate and humiliate and try to put pressure on the West.
All right, but the fact that after our president comes out and says, we're going to declare this counterterrorism offensive, which even his own department had to clear up and say he really meant to say war, they don't seem to be frightened at all. I mean, shouldn't we have increased bombing? Shouldn't we have had more military strikes? Shouldn't we have been ready?
Clearly, the White House and the president are not handling this well. I wish they would stop saying what they're not going to do. And in terms of, we're not putting ground forces. What he should just say is, we're going to use special operations forces and their capabilities. Period. Leave it at that. And because by making the statements he's been making, our allies in this coalition he's trying to build are not going to join us.
Why would they
join and put troops on the ground if we're not going to put them there?
Exactly. But let's say that one of these specialists, or whatever he wants to call them, is injured or killed. Then do we put troops on the ground?
Look, when we did the invasion of Afghanistan, we had CIA officers and special operations forces on the ground, doing the airstrikes, doing the intelligence. This war will only be won by doing that. We're going to work with the Syrians, surely. We'll work with the Kurds. We'll work with the Iraqis and others. We're going to have to put people on the ground. All of this nonsense about saying that we're not going to have everybody on the ground is just that. It's nonsense. Without those people on the ground, we will not defeat this enemy.
Gary, you are well experienced in this area. I mean, if I had to go through everything that you've done, I wouldn't have time for the segment. But I mean, have you ever seen a president say, "This is when we're leaving. This is what we're not going to do. This is not an Islamic State. This is not war. It's a counterterrorism." I mean, I thought I was watching 24.
It's just, for me, it's incomprehensible. It's hard for me to understand. It's hard for me to understand who's advising the president. It doesn't fit in the framework. There was a guy by the name of David Galula in the early 1960s who wrote the framework on counterinsurgency. He'd be rolling over in his grave if he saw what this White House is doing. Because it doesn't fit in any of the paradigm of what we teach, how we execute these types of conflicts. If you looked at David Petraeus' counterinsurgency manual, it was a rehash of what Galula did. Galula fought, 5 counterinsurgencies around the world. He understood that you needed to use your own forces, local forces, a mix of things. We don't have the time to go through all the mistakes that this administration is making.
Let me ask you this. If we need other partners, seeing as we didn't come through for Egypt, we didn't give them what they wanted, what had been promised to the Muslim Brotherhood in terms of the Apache helicopters and the Abraham tanks, and, we didn't follow through on that red line threat, do we really expect to have allies from the Arab nations join us?
Your opening segment was on spot. The fact is we've not been a reliable partner to these countries during this administration, and they have absolutely no reason to believe that we are going to follow through.
Gary Berntsen, always good to have you on. Thanks so much, Gary. And